and color balance. Please let us know your text for use in logo, web address, color of logo that you want. We will design 3 variations of your logo for you to choose from for only $99.95, with 100% refund of your $99.95 if you're not satisfied. We provide fast delivery and professional design. We also design any size web banner ad for $35. Call us at 347-674-1680. That's 347-674-1680. An operator is standing by to take your call.
Education, this is the foundation. Our rising population needs sound education to be recognized anywhere you go. You gotta have your certificate to show, to enjoy any kind of happiness. Knowledge is the key to success. Children go to school and learn well. Otherwise later on in life you go catch real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't allow idle companions to lead you astray. To earn tomorrow, you got to learn today. For employment, yes, employment, you must be intelligent. So it's essential, very essential, to have your credentials. But if you're blockheaded like a mule, remember no one will employ a fool. You will be the last one to be hired, and the very first one to be fired. Children go to school and learn well. Otherwise later on in life you go catch real hell. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't follow idle companions or you will get burned. To earn, you got to learn.
That one day, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Segregated schools were and are inferior schools. We still haven't fixed them 50 years after Brown versus Board of Education. And the inferior education they provided, then and now, helps explain the pervasive achievement gap between today's black and white students.
I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream for this.
When we take those tests, even when black and Latino students score at the top of the distribution, so even when black and Latino students do very well using the biased and absurd indicators that we use in this country, they're still 40% less likely to be put into an advanced placement class or an honors class in high school than white students who scored in the middle of the distribution. So you have average white students, according to this criteria, and of course the criteria is bogus, but understand it's the one we use. Using this criteria, white students who are merely average are still more likely to have advanced or accelerated classes once they get to high school. Now, what does that mean? It means that those students are going to get more prepared for the SAT, right? They're going to get more prepared for the ACT. They're going to take the test and they're going to do better. And we're going to act shocked when people of color do worse on a test that they were systemically excluded from preparing for, as if that is a surprise. I mean, black and Latino students of whatever socioeconomic status, 2.5 times more likely than whites to be put into remedial classes, where they're not going to receive the same instruction, they're not going to have the same coursework, they're not going to be challenged in the same way, right? And so we then act surprised when in 11th grade they take the SAT, the ACT, they don't do as well, and then our society says, what? Well, now you're not capable of going on to college, or at least not that college, because you're not as smart as somebody else over here. The fact that the structure of the educational system guaranteed that you would not do as well, virtually assured it, is something we don't want to talk about. But that's the systemic issue.
To me, our achievement gap is largely a function of institutional racism. It's largely a function of how we do education. The overassignment of students of color to special education, that's institutional racism. It's built into the system. Institutional racism is where there's a set of assumptions, behaviors, procedures, ways of doing things that are just commonly accepted that everybody kind of participates in, but they have these inequitable results by race. Overassignment of students to special ed, students of color to special ed. Overassignment of your least experienced, least trained, least educated, most alternatively educated teachers to the kids, to students of color. If you look at a district that's very racially diverse and has middle class, lower class, all of your most experienced, most educated, best teachers will be in the middle class white schools, and the greater percentage of your least experienced new teachers, particularly brand new teachers, least educated, most alternatively certified, will be in your low income schools, particularly students of color. And that's national, and it's accepted. That's institutional racism. Overassignment of kids of color to buildings that are the worst buildings, have the worst supplies, have the worst equipment or the least equipment. Underassignment of kids of color to gifted class. All the experts say gifted is equally distributed across all populations. So if I go into a gifted class in a diverse school, I ought to see the same proportions of kids in the gifted as I see in the low track. But 90% of the schools you go into, if you go to a low track school in a diverse school, it'll be kids of color, low income, in the low track, and in the high track will be white middle class kids.
Or excessive grouping has persisted for a very long time for a number of reasons. One is that I think many teachers just see it as convenient. You know, if you have a group of kids who are not so far apart from each other, they think that it's easier to teach. I think in many cases there's pressure from the parents or advocates of the high-achieving children who are often in favor of having children who are high-achieving be separate from others. But I think that there's kind of a well-meaning belief that instruction should be as targeted to each individual child's needs as possible, and I think many people then take the next step to imagining that the only way to do that is to have children physically separated from each other, either within class or into separate classes. I think that that students shouldn't be separated for long periods of time in any case, and that if you had a grouping plan that you were using that caused children to be separated by performance, and that it so happened in that school that separating children by performance also separated them by ethnicity or language background or what have you, it would give you a very strong message that this is not a good thing to do. I think, we have many goals in education, many objectives, and certainly a sense of being one student body and ultimately one community and one nation is a primary goal in education, along with many others. And if you were using a grouping plan for an instructional reason, it had better have a very strong rationale and be used in a very limited way if it has the effect of separating children by ethnicity or race or language background.
Well, flexible grouping by definition means that you're not trapped in the same group all the time. I mean, that's it, period. So teachers have to monitor how kids are moving from group to group or whether they're trapped in a group. The worst thing you can do is trap a kid in the same group of people. It doesn't help them. They don't get to know other kids. They start to follow a very narrow path. The path is usually unrelenting. There isn't much escape from it. So we want kids who seem to belong to certain groups by virtue of their own choice or how we put them in there. We want to break down those boundaries and move them around. So if I have a group of kids who I pulled together, say 8 kids, to do a little mini lesson on how to infer while you read and how to keep track of what you're thinking using Post-its, then I want to make sure that that kid doesn't remain in the same skills-based group day after day after day. So it's all about balance, it's all about flexibility, because the more flexibility you bring to your approach, the greater the kids learn from each other.
So in schools, for example, the lower expectations that students of color and white students commonly, or the students of color and low-income students and language minority students commonly run into are a form of institutional racism. Tracking structures, and then the whole tracking special education continuum, so you have special education all the way up to college prep and GATE, gifted and talented, in which white students are disproportionately in the upper level groups, as are affluent students, and students of color and students from low income communities are disproportionately in the lower level groups, that are then given instruction that takes them to very different futures.
Maybe the hardest part is if you teach, you have to live your teaching. You can't say, you do not as I do, but do as I say. No. You have to say, I'm doing my best to live what I teach. I have a painting by Phoebe of a group that she calls Sister Suki's Funeral. And all the women, there are about 9 women, and they all look like women in my grandmother's prayer meeting group. So whenever I'm obliged to do something, I take that painting and I look at that painting. There's an empty chair. And I think, now what would Grandma do? What would she say? I can almost hear her voice say, now, sister, you know what's right. Just do right. You don't really have to ask anybody. The truth is, right may not be expedient. It may not be profitable, but it will satisfy your soul. It brings you the kind of protection that bodyguards can't give you. Try to be all you can be, to be the best human being you can be. Try to be that in your church, in your temple. Try to be that in your classroom. Do it because it is right to do. You see, people will know you, and they will add their prayers to your life. They'll wish you well. I think if your name is mentioned and people say, oh hell, oh damn, I think you're doing something wrong. But if your name is mentioned and people say, oh, she's so sweet, he's so nice, oh, I love, oh, God bless her.